This is a steady rest for my Monarch 10EE lathe, and I've been wanting one for it for a little while. I will have some projects I want to do where I need a steady rest, and I didn't have one. And looking on eBay for a used one, you know, they're like $750, and I just can't afford that. So I thought, well, I'll try to make one. So this was my attempt at making one. I poured this out of aluminum. This is the pattern that I made to pour it with. It's a two-part pattern. And I poured it in aluminum. I wasn't making videos when I first started making this, and so there's no video of the beginning of it, and basically pouring this and getting it the surface finished off and the milling of the body itself, most of that I don't have, but I do have video of making all the little parts and kind of finishing it up. This is the piece that goes on the bottom that holds it to the lathe, and then of course it's locked on there with that. All right, well, I hope you enjoy it. Okay, I'm drilling, getting this set up to drill out, to put the inserts in for the bolts that will make up the pieces that actually support whatever you're turning in here. And I'm trying to get this lined up directly in the center, and I've got a line scribed across here, which I set it out on a plate, and I got it all lined up halfway between here, and I've got a line scribed in the bottom that shows me directly below this. So I wasn't really quite sure how to set this up, and I'm still not sure I've got it set up the easiest or the best way, but what I've done is I use these hermaphrodite calipers, and I've got that line in the middle set up directly in the middle of these jaws, and then I've scribed a line on my jaw in this die exactly in the middle, and then I'm taking a square and lining it up on there, right on that line, and then lining it up with the line that I scribed across the top up here. So that's how I've got it set up. Next thing I need to do is I'm gonna mill this nice and flat, so when I put my insert in, it'll sit flat, and then we'll drill out the hole. All right, I've got my cutter mounted, and I'm just going to start it up and start getting the depth on it. And I think for our purposes that's clean enough. Let me show you what we got. Alright, that's it for now. Okay, I'm going to put a little more dye on here, and then I need to redraw this line. Alright. Okay, I've taken out my chuck, and I've mounted a 1/2-inch drill bit in a collet because I don't have room now for the drill chuck. So now we're going to drill this one out. Okay. Now I'm going to switch this out and put in a 3/4 bit. It'll also be in a collet. Alright, now we're going to run in our 3/4 bit. Okay, that's got this hole ready, so I'm going to flip it around and drill this one. That's got all of them drilled out. Now we'll look at getting the inserts put in. Alright, here it is. With the holes have all been drilled. And here's the inserts that go in there. And right now they just drop in. What my plan is, I'm going to epoxy these in there. Well, that one doesn't want to go in. Let's see. That one does. Maybe this one's bigger. Oh, you know, it's got a little booger on it right there. It's got a little burr on it. Right there. So I'll file that off. Let me go get some epoxy and we'll get these glued in here. Got a little newspaper down. Got some acetone. Paper towel. We'll do that first just to kind of clean this up a little bit. Get this dye off of here. I'm going to clean these inserts up. Make sure that they're absolutely oil free. Okay. And to make sure my holes are clean, I'm going to work it in each one of those. Alright, that's got our holes all cleaned. Next thing, we need to mix up some epoxy. This is some old 2-ton epoxy I've had around. Well, it's still using up. That'll be enough for today. Okay, just got me a popsicle stick. Mix that up real good. Says this dries in 30 minutes, or it takes 2 hours to get to the full working. Okay, so I gotta kind of make a balance here of enough epoxy to hold and not so much that it gets on my threads. I guess I could chase the threads with a tap later, I don't really know. Okay, we'll put just a thin coating on the outside. Nothing else, just to kind of wet it so it'll stick to the other that's in there. Okay, that's one. Let me get a paper towel, let's clean that off. Ooh. Okay, looking down in there, it looks like I got quite a bit on the inside. It doesn't look like, when I look down through the threads though, from this angle, I don't see any epoxy in the way, so where my bolt's gonna run. A little bit dripped out there. Okay, so I think I'm going to take a popsicle stick and try to reach up in there and get some of that cleaned out of there. Oh yeah, whoops, it fell out. Okay, so let me put just a little bit more on there, and then I guess I'm going to need to put some tape on them.
There we go. That's how it looks inside. Okay, we're going to let this dry.
Alright, I got a piece of 1/2 inch stock chucked in here, and we're going to drill the end out. This is the piece that's going to go in the end of it to rub against the stock inside of the steady rest. So this flange will get turned off, but we've got to make a 3/8 thread on the inside of this for it to screw up into. So the first thing we're going to do is get that drilled out. All right, now we're going to drill it out with a 5/16 drill bit. And we've got to drill 7/16 deep. So, start there. Okay, next we need to go ahead and tap that hole. This is a 3/8/16 plug tap. There we go, get it set back here so it won't move on me. And now we're going to swap that out with a bottom tap so we can cut threads all the way to the bottom of that hole. Alright, that's got those threads cut. Now we want to get a die, and we're going to cut external threads to, we need 4.5 inches of thread. So right to there, a little cutting fluid on. Bring this up. Now I'm going to use my tailstock to get me lined up. Alright, that's got our 4.5 inches of threads done. We've got this tapped out and ready, so all we got to do now is cut it off to 5.5 inches and make 2 more. Okay, this is one of our bolts in here. I've got it in a collet holder that allows me to turn it, and it'll do exactly 90 degrees every time, because I want to put a square on the end of this so that I can use it with one of these wrenches. Okay, so first I've got to figure out exactly where I want to put. I want this to be 3/8 deep. Okay, so I'm going to move this to the end of the end mill, then crank the end mill over 0.375, and we'll bring it up the knee until we scratch the surface. Sounds like we might be doing it right there. Yeah. Okay, so we'll set this at 0. And we'll take a 20 thousandths cut. Pull you in there. Another 20. I'm trying to take light cuts because I'm sticking way out. I couldn't go into the collet any farther because the bolt's hitting the back end of the collet. The bolt is exactly 1/2 inch. I want to go to 0.375 square, so I'm taking off 0.63 off of each side. .063, sorry. Okay, and then we'll just loosen this up. Flip it over. Line it up with a parallel on the front there. Tighten it back down. Knock it down in the vise. Pull our end mill back up. We'll take another 20 thousandth cut. Okay, now I'm going to measure that. We're at 0.393. So I'm supposed to take another 23. Well, no, that would make us a little shy. So I need to just take another 20 off. Well, actually another 18 off. Let's try that. Let's see what that did. 0.37. 375. Let's take, I don't want it to be a real tight fit, so I'm going to go ahead and take 2 more thousandths off. Okay, so that should do it. That's just a tad more Like it's like 0.3745 or something like that. All right, let's flip it. Let's see if that fits on there. Yeah. All right, that'll go. Yeah, let me get that cleaned up with a file.